So China has to cooperate with Afghanistan.
Well, China is one of our immediate neighbors. So we have the border with China world. So I believe they can further improve and they can further increase this economic strength.
Yeah, but China cannot send troops or something.
No. So that if we have the technical assistance of China, I believe in the country, it's not only for the benefit of Afghanistan, but also for China.
What do you think of the positive significance of this conference?
In the name of Almighty Allah, the most compassionate and the most merciful, I, as an Afghan politician and economist, I'd like to say that the Brussels conference on Afghanistan was a complete success from both sides, from donors and from the government of Afghanistan. Afghanistan was able to meet all the requirements which were the pre-qualification or like the pre-requirement for arranging such a conference like the one Brussels conference on Afghanistan. They had to set out their vision for the future and present the Afghanistan peace and peace development, the Afghanistan National Peace and Development Framework, and to give the donors the vision of Afghanistan for the future development activities and what they will achieve in the future. Beside that, they also presented about 4 of the NPPs, and one of them was regarding the empowering of the Afghan women, which was very much important for the donors, and it attracted huge attention from the international community. Beside this, I'd like to say that in the Brussels conference, the government of Afghanistan was able to secure more than the expected amount of USD dollars aid. Afghan government was expecting to secure at least or maximum maybe $3.5 billion for each year from 2017 to 2020. But fortunately, they were able to achieve $3.8 billion for each year from 2017 to 2020. And I believe it's a big achievement, but in receiving and giving international aid, only receiving the aid or only securing the aid is not the main part. The most difficult and challenging part starts when we start the implementation of such international aid. And Afghanistan will have to be very careful regarding that. They will have to be fully qualified and fully able to implement this aid more efficiently as compared to the past.
All right. So you mentioned the implement. What do you think the biggest challenge for this kind of donating is to use it, how to use it? So according to us, our information in 2012, they also promised to donating such kind of money like 116 billion US dollars. Do you have any information about that? I mean, all of the money being already provided to Afghanistan government?
I was part of the Tokyo conference, luckily, and I was one of those who prepared the documents, and then we prepared the Tokyo Mutual Accountability Framework as well. We secured $16 billion at that time. There were some challenges from both sides, from the donors and as well as from the Afghan government. Some of the challenges or problems that we were facing from the donor side, I can mention some of them, like for example the predictability of aid. Like when could you predict the aid, like when to receive the aid from the donors. It was very important part of the receiving the aid. For example, if the government of Afghanistan could not receive the aid on time, so this would simply means delaying and deferring the implementation of the development projects. This was one of the problems. And sometimes there were some specific indicators which were set in the Tokyo Mutual Accountability Framework. If they were not achieved, so the donors were not willing to give the money to the Afghan government. Beside that, there were some challenges in the on and off budget implementation of the international aid as well. And from the Afghan government side, I can say that there were a number of challenges that this current government, led by Dr. Ashraf Ghani, needs to tackle those problems in order to more efficiently use this aid that the Afghan government secured in the Brussels conference on Afghanistan. I would like to suggest and recommend to the Afghan government in order to capacitate or develop the capacity of the Afghan government, especially in executing the development budget. At the moment, if you see most of the Afghan government ministries, they haven't executed even 30% of their development budget. However, they have only 1.5 or 2 months to the end of the Afghan fiscal year. This is one of the problem. Second thing is the management of international aid. It is very important for the Afghan government in order to be able to properly manage the international aid and use it in those areas where they are sure that they can implement. Beside that, the third factor could be the security problem, for which not only Afghanistan, but I call on the regional countries like China, Pakistan, Iran, India, Russia, and the international donors as well. As you know, that the war in Afghanistan or the insecurity in Afghanistan is not because of Afghanistan itself. It is a regional war fought in Afghanistan. So it needs a regional cooperation in order to address such gaps of the insecurity in Afghanistan as well. We need the cooperation and coordination of the regional countries, especially those that I mentioned before, like China, one of the countries which can really help in bringing security in Afghanistan. Beside that, like in implementation of some of the biggest projects, like we can say INEC copper, which was given to one of the Chinese companies. I hope that they will deliver according to the contract that they had signed with the Afghan government. This will also bring security to Afghanistan if China is involved in Afghanistan in some economic development projects or like in mineral extractions. I believe it will have its positive impact as well in the long term as well. And beside this, we do need to have a strategy for 4 to 5 years, which we do, and that is the Afghanistan National Peace and Development Framework, which the Afghan government presented in the Brussels Conference on Afghanistan. Beside that, they presented 4 NPPs, National Priority Programs, which also needed a huge amount of aid for their implementation. And beside this, I'm very happy to know that the international community also gave a grant or signed a grant of $200 million for state building with the Ministry of Finance. And this was one of the huge achievements as well. This is beside the amount that I mentioned before, which is like in total $15.2 billion for the upcoming 4 years from 2017 to 2020. So these are the challenges that the Afghan government and the regional countries will need to coordinate it with each other so that the aid we receive or the Afghan government receive from the donors will be used more efficiently as compared to the aid that we received in the Tokyo conference. Beside that, to directly address your question that you said, was the aid received in the Tokyo conference effective or not, or how much was it used?
Yes.
I can say that some of the countries like Japan, for example, they were very generous, and they were, according to the calculations that I have had from the Ministry of Finance, they have always implemented all their aid. Like, for example, if they promise $56 million, they implement the whole aid till the year they have promised to implement that aid, and they are technically also involved in implementation of the aid. This is one of the beauty of such donors like Japan. Beside that, the World Bank, I can mention, the United States do give the aid, but not completely. Some percentages are still remained, and with some donors they do not give their complete aid. I hope this time they will cooperate with the government of Afghanistan, and the Afghan government will also be pre-qualified and prepared for successful implementation of the international aid, especially in development of the capacity of the ministries to execute the budget at least 80% or 90% before the end of the fiscal year every year.
So from your opinion, what's the reason why they cannot achieve that? I mean, the capability of the ministries.
Well, as you know, Afghanistan is in a post-war or post-conflict situation, and it is considered as a fragile state at the moment as well. Fragile state, you know the meaning of fragile state, the state or the government which cannot provide the basic services to its nation or to its people, like for example the food, the health services, the education, the security, in such kind of things. We do not have security in most of our provinces, and beside that, most of the people who are currently working in the ministries are not fully capable of implementing the budget which is allocated for the development project. For this we need two things. One is the reform agenda, which was part of the Brussels conference as well. We need to bring reforms in the government. The Afghan government is very much dedicated in their they're willing to. There is the political will in the government to bring reforms, not only in the electoral system of the Afghan government, but also in the government ministries. So I believe if the government truly bring reforms, not only for their own benefits, but for the betterment of the Afghan government and implementation of the international aid, then I believe Afghanistan's government will be able to implement maximum aid this time. But if they do not address the gaps, like for example, we have the bureaucracy in the government ministries. Beside that, sometimes, as I mentioned before, security is one of the biggest concerns that is not allowing the ministries of the government to implement their the international aid in their development projects on time. Sometimes I'd like to say one thing, which is like the worst or the bad aspect of the international aid. I've written my thesis on factors that contribute to aid effectiveness in Afghanistan. So I'd like to say one thing, the bad characteristic of the international aid is that it creates elites in the country. Elites. So those people then become a threat for the government, and they create parallel governments with the main government of the country. And this is one of the challenges as well. Like in some provinces, we have some governors or warlords or some powerful people who have become more powerful by receiving such aids, and they take the contracts from the government legally and or illegally, and they are misusing their position or prestige there. So such people then creates problem for the government, and then they do not let the government implement the projects within the given deadline in those specific provinces. And this is one of the worst characteristics of the international aid as well.
So how about this year? Is there a very clear schedule or something like roadmap to make sure implement of this kind of donation?
Yes, this time, as you know, that after the Tokyo conference, we had the Warsaw conference, which was mainly focused on the military assistance to Afghanistan, and then we had the London conference, and then we have had this the Brussels conference on Afghanistan, which was a follow-up of the Tokyo conference indeed, because in the Tokyo conference it was promised to continue such conferences or international sittings on Afghanistan, and beside that they had decided to arrange or hold senior officials meeting in which the ministers from most of the countries who are giving aid to Afghanistan were participating, and they will also have the senior officials meeting in the upcoming year as well. So such conferences will definitely help the government of Afghanistan to implement this aid properly. Beside that, there is the self-reliance through mutual accountability framework. This time, self-reliance, we did, like Afghanistan did present the self-reliance paper to Tokyo conference, and then it will be completed in 2024. So from now onward, this self-reliance through mutual accountability framework will be strictly followed and observed by both donors and the Afghan government, and they will be going ahead by implementing those specific indicators they have set and mutually agreed upon that. So there is the specific strategy for that, and they will be implementing the Afghanistan National Peace and Development Framework. That is the document they will have to work on that. And like if you may be aware of the Citizens Charter, which was inaugurated a few days back before the Brussels conference on Afghanistan in the presidential palace by President Ghani. So that is also part of this. Afghanistan does have a specific strategy for implementing this aid, but as I mentioned before, those problems that I pointed out, Afghan government needs to tackle them first in order to be able to implement and execute this international aid through their own budget.
What you mentioned, actually is the responsibility of the Afghan government. But as we know as well that some the donator countries, they also made like predictions, like something like you have to do something like that, then I provide the donating money. If you can't, we will maybe withdraw money.
That's very true. That's very true. Those specific indicators that I talked about in the self-reliance through mutual accountability framework. In this mutual accountability framework, donors have specified their own terms and conditions, and they have set some indicators that the Afghan government will have to achieve. If the Afghan government do not achieve or does not achieve those indicators, then definitely, as I mentioned before, one of the problems is the predictability of international aid, and it is because of these indicators. If indicators are not achieved, like in last time, for example, after the Tokyo conference, the Afghan government and the international community agreed upon the Tokyo Mutual Accountability Framework, and one of them was the EVAW law, Elimination of Violence Against Women. And the international community was insisting on implementation of this law and approval of this law, which was approved later by the President Karzai at that time. So they were insisting on that. Same time, same thing this time. The international community has their own conditions. They have set for the Afghan government to achieve them first, then they will flow the money to them.
All of that are reasonable.
Well, sometimes there are something. Even the EVAW law was kind of in conflict with the religious values of the Afghans. More than 99% of people of Afghanistan are Muslims, and you know that as well. So there were some points which were touching the religious values, and they were not acceptable to the people. But due to the insistence and persistence of the international community, the Afghan government has to pass this law, and then they implemented that. But still, I believe there are some challenges. One of the challenges could be like if a man marries 2 wives, so it will be kind of a crime according to that law. But a Muslim, according to our religion, a man can marry 4 wives. There are some conditions set in the Holy Quran, in our holy book. The conditions are set there. Not every man can marry 4 wives. If you meet those conditions, if you are capable of meeting those conditions, then you are allowed to have 4 wives, but not by force. The girl has to agree with you as well to marry you, despite your previous or like first wife.
All right, and I also heard this time that maybe the union, your union will maybe can send back like more than 80,000 Afghan Muhajirin
Migrant.
to country as a condition that they provide the donate. How do you think about this?
You mean that the refugees will have to return to Afghanistan?
Yes.
I personally believe this is not something good for the Afghan government. Every human is born free. So, for example, you, me, everyone in this world, they have their own life. They have to decide about their life. If you have provided better facilities, I'm calling on the Afghan government, if you have provided better facilities for better lives of the Afghans, especially the educated generation of the Afghans, then of course no one will go out of the country. If you have provided the security in the country, no one will leave the country. I can give you the examples of many educated people who have got their masters from Japan, from the US, and from other countries. But unfortunately, due to the insecurity in the country here, and due to the security threats that we are facing here, besides that the joblessness, like most of those educated and qualified people are not getting jobs easily due to the nepotism and the bureaucracy in the government. And if you do not know a parliamentarian or like parliament member, or if you do not know a minister, it's not easy for you to get a better job. Everyone wants those, especially those who are educated, they want to get a better job because they want to have an influence in decision making or like on the policy level. I, for example, am Master of Public Policy. Do you think that I did my master in public policy just to come back and be jobless here or unemployed? Or do you think that I did my master's in order to work under the order or instruction of someone who is just a bachelor or who holds a bachelor? Of course not. I did my master. I invested 2 years on my master in public policy in Japan in order to come back to Afghanistan to serve more efficiently in a better position where my idea or my opinion will be accepted, where I can decide what to do and what not to do, and where I can give my idea in the development process. If not this, then what's the benefit? There is no point in getting further education, and only bachelor is enough for the Afghans.
That's a pro-reality. Just now, as you mentioned, Mr. Hamdard, that the conditions of the donating country, like what they said about the women's law, is maybe part of that is against the reality or maybe the real situation now in Afghanistan. So according to this kind of situation, that will affect the donating for this country, and or maybe that will affect on the purpose of this donating, to help this country.
Before answering to your question, I'd like to say that the international community is really committed, and they are really willing. There is a political will between them or among them to help Afghanistan stand by its feet, and we as Afghans really thank them for that. But there is kind of conditions when we talk about the mutual cooperation. Like if I am giving you the money, at least my people or the people of my country, the ones who are giving me the tax in order to help you or other countries like your country, for example, Afghanistan, they ask me, where did our money go? Do they spend the money efficiently? Do they really address the needs of the people in that country where our money goes? So these are the things that we need to address. The Afghan government need to focus on these things in order to justify to those taxpayers in the developed countries who are giving us their money from their own salaries and like from their own income. They pay the money to the governments, and then their governments give the money to us. So this definitely will affect, like as I said before, both donors and the Afghan government have set specific indicators, and both needs to address and implement those specific indicators in order to be able to give and receive the money from each other. And if they do not implement those, this definitely will affect the aid or the donation. Like the evolve law, it started practically, it was kind of implemented. However, there were some resistance, from the Afghan community. But still that law is still practically used, and it's implemented through the judiciary and legal organizations of the Afghan government.
All right. We know the original purpose of this assistant conference is willing to help Afghanistan to achieve peace and development, especially to help it to rebuild its own capacity to develop. Since the last time, 2012, till now is 4 years. Do you think that works, and how much percent do you think that work efficiently?
I believe since 2012 we have achieved many things in the country, and we have paved the way for development process. It is a long process, like not ending so easy or like so soon, but we have achieved many of the things which are necessary for paving the ground for the development process. And the previous or the ex-government did achieve many things by implementing the international aid from 2012 till 2014, and then the new government came. So definitely this does help. I cannot say that it was used very effectively. There were challenges that the Afghan government faced, and there was a gap. Unfortunately, we had the election problems. You are witness of that as well. We did have the election problems, and lots of money was wasted on that as well. So I cannot say it was used very efficiently, but I hope this time the government has strong political will, and I hope the National Unity Government of Afghanistan will be able to use this aid more efficiently, because Afghans should not suffer more. It's enough for them. We are witnessing the killing of many young men, women, boys, children, and girls, and it's really intolerable for the Afghan people to further suffer from such killings and insecurity. If we efficiently use the international aid, I believe there will be security, there will be the smooth development processes, progress, and there will be no war.
Do you think, no matter the 2012 16 billion US dollar or this time 15 billion US dollar, this kind of money, this amount of money will help Afghanistan solve all its problem?
I believe international aid does not solve all the problems, but of course it is the beginning for capacitating or developing the capacity of the government in order to be able to become self-reliant in the future. It's one of the conditions for implementation of the international aid that the receiving or the aid receiving countries have to have their development strategy. Like we now have the Afghanistan National Peace and Development Framework, and before this we had the Afghanistan National Development Strategy, which was implemented from 2010 to 2014 or 15, something like that, and which had 22 NPPs or National Priority Programs. This time we have the Afghanistan National Peace and Development Framework. So if there is kind of a development strategy like this and that is implemented properly, then the Afghan government should try to reduce dependency on international aid. Not only the Afghan government, but all the developing countries who are receiving the international aid should have a development strategy, and they should have a plan. For example, the Afghan government should have the plan. If they have the aid dependency on Afghanistan, on international aid for the year 2017, if it is 100%, in 2018 it should become 90%. In 2019, for example, it should become 60%. In 2020, for example, it should become 60 or like 40 or 30%. So the aid dependency of Afghanistan should be reduced gradually. Then the Afghan government and the people of Afghanistan will reach the self-reliance milestone that they have set for themselves, and then we can hope that all the problems of the country will be solved. Only receiving the international aid cannot solve all the problems. Specific development strategies and proper management of the implementation of the development project are the things that can help reduce the problems and challenges in developing countries, which is still involved in some kind of internal war between the government and armed groups, and I believe this will be helpful. But only international aid is not enough to solve all the problems. We need to reduce the dependency on international aid.
Especially to stop the war first, I guess.
We do need to stop the war, but Afghanistan cannot do that alone, because now this war with the Taliban or with Daesh or ISIS or some other armed groups is not the war of Afghanistan. China, Pakistan, Russia, the Central Asian countries, India, the United States, the UK, and other countries, European countries and regional countries have to participate in coordination of eliminating of war in Afghanistan. We need, if we are working for the regional integration in Asia, if we are the hub between the Central Asian countries and the South Asian countries, then we do need their support in eliminating the war from Afghanistan as well. I hope you will give this message to the world, that a safer Afghanistan is always a better place than an Afghanistan which is the center of war for the world. So I believe that if the international community and the donors help us eliminate the war from Afghanistan, we will be a better place for your cooperation, and we will be a hub for the Central Asian countries and the South Asian countries, and our connection with the European countries will be a big gain for the Afghan government and for the Europe as well. They can eat our fresh fruit and they can enjoy trade between Afghanistan and Europe, and between Afghanistan and Central Asia, and between Afghanistan and South Asian countries. And the South Asian countries can have a smooth path for their transit, trading commodities, and they can connect themselves with the Central Asian countries very smoothly and without any security concerns within Afghanistan. So please help Afghanistan to secure peace in it and stop war. Let's support this peace process and work for a better Afghanistan, to have better lives in it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. But we need to take some footage that we are chatting.
Okay.
Okay. So there.